I just finished the third week of the winter trimester at Ravenswood, and this whole trimester I'm just focusing on transfer drawings. So last week I finished this transfer drawing of Brian, which took 4 days, and transfer drawings, they usually take 4 to 5 days to complete, and the rest of the students at Ravenswood, they're working on a 2-week pose of Brian. And since I'm doing transfer drawings, I finished the first week with him, and then since everyone's still continuing with the same pose with him, and I need to do another transfer drawing, I just moved to a different spot in the room so I could get a little bit of a different angle for Brian to work on the next transfer drawing that I did last week. So how the model room is set up is we have Brian the model, he's under the skylight, and then all of the students are kind of arced around them with their easels. And well, this school's full of, or the spots are full of students, so there's only one other spot that I could take that was free in the arc around the model. And unfortunately it wasn't too far away from my original spot that I had, so the pose, or my second transfer drawing, isn't too dramatically different from my first one. And I felt like the second angle that I had of Brian was a bit more challenging because it was slightly more going towards profile rather than straight on. And so Brian's pose has a lot of movement in it. He's got, I think he's going this way. He's got a lot of movement in his torso, and those angles are pretty strong. And so I could really clearly see the dramatic angles in the first angle that I had of him. And then when he was going more profile, he still has a lot of movement in it, and you can still see that movement, but the angles that express that, especially in the torso, are a little less dramatic. So that was a really awesome drawing challenge, to show the movement in the pose with less dramatic angles and not make it look like the model was like too straight up and down, but still had nice movement in that counterposto pose. And since I found that second angle more challenging, I focused most of my energy on his shoulders with his torso to his hips to the ankles, and it took a while to capture everything correctly. So I kind of ran out of time and kept things more simplified this time, especially in the arms and the hands of Brian. Brian finished this pose last Thursday, and then we're starting a new pose with a new model named Emily, and she's going to be posing for us for 4 days, so that's perfect time for me to get a transfer drawing done. And so she started on Friday, and so here is the first day of the transfer drawing with Emily. But I'll talk more about it in the next video for the next week when I actually finish this drawing. Okay, and then the afternoon session, the cast of the foot painting continues. This last week I was getting, or the week before, I was getting pretty frustrated with it, and I felt like I was spinning my wheels because felt like I was putting a lot of paint down, or keep repainting the whole thing over and over again, and it wasn't progressing or moving along anymore. And I just kind of, well, I didn't know what to do, and I was just getting frustrated with it because painting, especially painting in the context that Ravenswood is teaching, is still really new to me, and I'm just still trying to figure everything out with that. So Magda's critiques for that, she said that my painting wasn't as bright as the actual cast, so she said I needed to make it brighter. And I asked her how to do that because, especially in the light areas, I know that I was using pure white, but it did look a lot darker and duller than the actual painting. And Magda said that to fix that I needed to be painting a lot thicker. And she said that oil paint as itself is pretty transparent. So when you're painting thin, even if you're using white, like the pure white with anything mixed into it, the dark wash that was your first layers is going to be showing through that oil paint. And also that oil paint, well, it dries darker anyway. So that was the problem that was like keeping me from getting that really full range of values between the lightest light and the darkest dark. So I mixed up really big piles of paint on my palette, and I just like went at it with like super thick brush strokes. I wasn't using any medium at the start, but Matt told me I needed to use a little bit because the paint was looking kind of scratchy or dry or something. But I only had a tiny bit of medium, but just really thick brush strokes, which is really fun to paint that way anyway. It's kind of a bit harder to control to do that, but I was getting a lot better results than what I was getting with the thinner paints. And it really did brighten everything up a whole lot, and I felt a lot better about my painting as well. Okay, and then Matt's critiques for last week were with figuring out how to resolve the painting. And he said that to resolve the painting, I need to be finding the shapes that you see in the plaster and making them look more unified and connecting the shapes. And I felt like with drawing, it took me a while with drawing to get that, but I was pretty good at making things like unified and not over modeled or like too much contrast between shapes and transitions. And painting, I'm still figuring out kind of how to do that, because it's well, it's a lot different than drawing, and it's like that learning curve I got to get over to figure out how to do that. So I felt like though Friday I was kind of getting the hang of it with connecting shapes and making things become more unified. So I'm super excited for next week to get working on that painting more and finally get to resolving it. And here's a detailed shot of the foot, and I really wanted to show you this close up because you can see, especially with the thicker paint, I'm getting a lot of really cool textures just using my brush. Magda last Friday showed me with a palette knife too how to paint with it, so yeah, I'm really excited about the textures. I really love textures in painting, and when I'm doing future paintings, I definitely want to explore a lot of different textures, but only textures really that show or have to do with the structure of the thing that you're painting, because I think when textures, when they get too random where you're just doing it for fun, which is fine to do for fun, but if it doesn't make sense in the context of the structure of what you're painting, I think it can kind of look a little silly too. But anyways, yeah, the painting with the thick paint is so much fun to do, so I really can't wait to get working on that next week.